When I first invited Dr. Barry Gillespie onto the podcast, I thought I was bringing on a traditional turned biological dentist. This is what I shared in my community, the Rebalancing Collective, and what I shared on my Instagram stories when I was gathering all of the questions that you wanted answered. But as soon as we began talking, I quickly realized I had misunderstood, and what unfolded ended up being far more empowering than the conversation I originally imagined. Dr. Gillespie is 78 years old. He spent 4 years in college, 4 years in dental school, and 2 more years becoming a surgical specialist before opening a successful practice in Massachusetts. He lived the dream life of a traditional dentist until his own body started speaking to him through headaches that no doctor could explain. Instead of silencing his symptoms with medication like he was told to do, he got curious. That curiosity changed every part of his life. It took him from surgery rooms to a life devoted to understanding the body's innate ability to heal. What makes this conversation so powerful isn't just Dr. Gillespie's wisdom. It's the honesty that only comes from someone who has lived inside the traditional system, followed the rules, believed in the model, and then had his entire perspective altered by real life. He's here sharing his opinions after 50 years of seeing both sides, what dentistry teaches and what he now knows to be true about whole body healing. And for me, that carries a different kind of weight. When I walked into my house after this interview, Ty and our kids asked me how it went. They are all invested in this conversation because, as you'll hear in the episode, we are getting so much pressure from the dentist, and the oral surgeon is calling every single week to schedule wisdom teeth removal, and the orthodontics are calling to get our kids in to look at their teeth. And so my whole family was deeply invested in what I was going to learn in this interview. The only words I could find were, I feel like I just sat with one of those really wise people you see in documentaries, someone who has actually lived the things that he's talking about. His insights mean so much to me, and I know to every single one of you listening, because we are not here for symptom masking or for band-aids. We are here for lived experience, and hearing from someone who has walked both sides and now chooses a different path is deeply grounding and profoundly empowering. You'll hear his honest, unfiltered opinions on things so many of us feel pressured into: wisdom teeth removal, fluoride, braces, root canals, and why, as he says, you don't want to go along with the herd. He takes you out of fear and back into discernment. The conversation around wisdom teeth alone is going to shift how you think about dental timelines. We compare it to circumcision, how the culture tells us to do something simply because that's what everyone does, instead of making decisions with intention and understanding. If you are someone who has ever sat in a dental chair or a doctor's office wondering, is this really the only way? This episode is for you. It's humbling, it's so empowering, and it's filled with the kind of wisdom that helps you see your health in a whole new light. I cannot wait for you to meet Barry. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Follow Your Gut podcast, the show for the woman who's ready to stop outsourcing her and her family's health and start leading it. I'm your host, Juniper. Every week, I'll teach you how to understand your body and your child's symptoms through the lens of the gut so you can take clear, confident steps towards real healing. This isn't about chasing symptoms or following trendy protocols. This is about foundational healing, where we get to the root of it all, your gut. I am so happy you're here. Let's dive in. Today we have Dr. Barry Gillespie here with us, and what an honor it is to be able to have this conversation with you. Before we pushed record, we just shared briefly how hard it is as mothers to navigate our dental and medical world. And, so often we hear moms say, well, I'm just a mom. But none of us are just moms. We are family's biggest advocates and our leaders. And I know that we have so much that we are going to learn from you today. And so I can't wait to just get into this conversation. Will you take just a minute to introduce yourself and share the road that you've been on? What has brought you to where you are today and the practice that you have?
Yeah, thank you for having me on to the podcast. If you're interested in my work, my name is Barry Gillespie. I was a trained periodontist. In other words, I went to college for 4 years. I went to dental school for 4 years. I went to 2 years of surgical work to be a periodontist. So I was in school for 10 years. I got out when I was 28, and I thought I knew everything, and everything was good. And we opened up a practice on Cape Cod in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And on Wednesdays, I used to fly to Nantucket, so life was very good. This is in 1975, 50 years ago. It happened like the first year I was out, it was okay. The second year, I started to develop headaches, and I didn't know where they were coming from. And I went to the medical people in my area, and they didn't have any answers. And they gave me these drugs, and I remember looking at the drugs in my bathroom at home, and I said, I'm not going to take drugs. I'm going to find out why I have a headache. And that journey has taken me down this road. I went to a chiropractor, and I walked in, and he said, you have a cranial problem. And I said, cranial
Wow.
problem? What's that? I'd never heard of that. This is 50 years ago. And that's when my whole journey started, where I get into cranial work, cranial sacral work. I get into fascial work. I started with adults who had headaches, TMJ, jaw strain. They clenched their teeth. They had neck pain. They had back pain. That's how I got into it. And then I started seeing children. And then we became very, very good with children with asthma, children with earaches, children with headaches, ADHD, and learning disorders and eye problems. And then a little bit later on in my career, we did a deep dive into newborns, where I saw about 500 or 600 infants out in Lancaster, mostly Amish. And found out we were very good for fussy babies who had breastfeeding problems. They had trouble latching on. They had failure to thrive. They had colic. They had reflux. They had gas and indigestion. They were constipated. They went every week, 7 days, and the pediatrician said, "Oh, if you breastfeed, you're fine with 7 days." We said, "No, you have to go every day." And there were many other conditions like strabismus and stridor and laryngomalacia, pyloric stenosis, colic, torticollis, plagiocephaly. We can get into that later, but there are a lot of conditions that we're very, very good with this craniosacral fascial therapy. So
Wow.
that's how I got into it. I thought I was going to be a periodontist, and I was for a while. And then in 1997, I left, and I went to massage school. I mean, who leaves a job like being a surgeon to go to massage school, which I did, and I started my own teaching in 1999, and I taught for a number of years, and now I have two trainers that are out teaching in America. If you're interested, go to the website. You can look at, you click on training, and you'll see where they're teaching. So we're out there, and we're trying to make it happen for everybody, and it's very, very exciting.
Well, and I have so much to say about your journey, but I want to touch on this very last part. This training that you are doing, it's not just for a certain type of expert, right? Like I could
Right.
attend this training.
Anybody can attend the training. And
Okay.
the reason why is it's a massage technique. There's no
Okay.
surgery, there's no technology, there's no medication, there's no drugs. It's a massage technique where you're holding an adult, you're holding a child, you're holding a baby, and you're feeling for fascial strain in their bodies, and you're helping them to release it. You're helping them to let it go. So
Wow.
that's the basis of our work, is that people we see, your newborn, your infant, your child, yourself, you're probably tight. And what's tight is this fascial web The fascia connects every cell of the body, 40 trillion cells of the body, and everything gets tight. When people are tight, they don't function that well, and then they have these little problems that come up, not life threatening, you'll live, but can you live with a headache? Can you live with neck aches? I can go down through the whole list. Can you live with asthma? And yeah, you can live with it. But, there's an answer to that, and it's because your fascia is tight. And then we connected the cranial sacral system into the fascial system. And so it's basically the cranial sacral fascial system that gets really, really tight, and it creates a lot of quality of life problems. You walk around with a headache, your neck hurt, your hip hurts, your back, something is bothering you. And a lot of times it can be cleared out. A lot of it's fascia. The fascia is tight and it's pulling in there and it's straining your infant. Your infant was, curled up for 40 weeks. And all of a sudden they come out like this and, like, oh, I'm tight.
Yeah.
That's what your newborn's saying. That's what your infant's saying. I'm tight. I have reflux, I have colic, I can't breastfeed. There's some parts of my body that are tight that aren't really functioning that well. So we just help them loosen up. So yes, we see mothers who take the training. They come in and they might say, well, I'm just a mom. Well, one of my teachers, Kim Sherlock, was just a mom. She took the training in 2008 and she became an assistant teacher with me. And then she took over the training in 2015. When I was turning 70 or so, and they've been out there for 10 years. She and Holly have been out there for 10 years, and it's so gratifying when a mother takes the training, and she loves working on the family, and she works on the nieces and the whole neighborhood, and she says, I love this, and I'm good at it. I'm going to massage school. I'm going to open up a business. I'm going to have my own practice. This is what I'm going to do, and that's really rewarding when I hear that. So a lot of good things are happening out there. People might say, well, I'm just a dad or just a mom. Well, you know your child better than anybody. And a lot of times, well, at least in Philadelphia, the pediatricians will just blow you off. Whatever the child has, well, they'll grow out of it. They'll turn the corner, or, there's always something. But your
Absolutely.
baby's in pain, your baby's throwing up, and well, look, no, there's a problem there. The fascia is tight. So, but we can talk about this during the hour or two.
Okay. Well, this is very interesting to me, and I know everybody listening, because everybody here is listening to find different ways to heal their families. And so I know before we hit record, you said that you guys are doing a training here where I live in Bozeman, Montana next summer, and I'm definitely going to attend that. I mean, all of the tools that we can put in our medicine cabinets and our tool banks just empowers us, right? And so that feels
Right.
very exciting to me.
Well, I gave my first training out in the Rocky Mountain areas in Missoula in 2012.
Oh,
And I was out there. We had about 30, 35 people, and they invited me to come out. And I came out with a number of teachers, and we taught the infant work out there too. And the following summer in 2013, I gave an infant training out there. And so, I'm familiar with Montana. I love Missoula, and I'm sure Bozeman's the same. So, yeah, people are out there. They're very independent, and they want the best for their families. And it's different than around Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, big pharma is very powerful here. The hospitals are all big pharma, and it's just all the offices are here, and it's a different vibe on the east and the northeast coast, especially in Philadelphia. But when you get out into the rural areas of the country, it's more, hey, what works, natural things, and let's get into it. So basically, that was half of the equation that I got into. The other
okay.
half, around 1977, I started looking at my blood relatives, and most of them were getting cancer and heart disease in their 50s and 60s, and they were dying. And I said, okay, what's wrong with this picture? And I found out that their lifestyle wasn't that great. So in 1977, I decided to become a vegetarian. I stopped eating meat. 1978, I stopped eating sugar. I read this book called Sugar Blues. They said basically sugar was poison, so I stopped eating sugar. And I stopped highly processed foods, any factory made food. I try to avoid all of that. And then I stopped drinking alcohol. And then in 1980, I stopped dairy products. So basically, I've been a vegan for 45 years.
You
And
are
I
in
was a
good
vegan
company.
before there was a name called vegan. You were a vegetarian who didn't have fish or meat or chicken or turkey or, eggs
This is
and blah, blah, blah. But now there's a term for it. But I was an original vegan. So that's what kind of works for me.
when I was 9 years old, I I've always been very connected to animals, and I just made this connection of like I don't want to put that in my body anymore. And I told my mom, and she's like, okay. And so she started cooking 2 meals, and I haven't had an animal product since I so for gosh, what's that? I just turned 38, so almost 30 years.
30 years. And you've
Yeah,
lived. You
and
can
I've
still sur-
lived.
you can
I'm
still survive.
thriving. Yes, I can survive. And, I've had four very beautiful, healthy, full term pregnancies. And I have four thriving kids who have been plant based their
Yep.
entire upbringing.
Well,
And
that's what I
it's,
got into it, and I saw your website, and it was all about the microbiome. I said, "Wow, these people are all over it." So I started at one when that started coming around. I started studying that. And I basically found out that if you eat really well, if you eat organic, whole food, mostly plants, the bugs inside of you will love it. The good bugs will love it.
the good bugs love
If you
it.
start, yeah, if you have garbage, you're eating garbage, which about 5% of the Americans eat garbage, then the bad bugs will eat that, and then you have a problem. And then when I found out that there are about 40 trillion cells in the body, there were more bugs than we have cells. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a big deal. This whole microbiome, we know very little about it, a fraction of what we should know. The microbiome is really
Yeah.
important, so I'm really happy you people are into it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I have dedicated my work to our microbiome because my son struggled with many symptoms despite, living a very intentional lifestyle. And, the pediatricians told me he would outgrow it, or, here's a steroid cream for his rash. And
Yeah.
I just wasn't willing to accept it, just like you. I'm not going to accept medication. I'm going to understand why this is happening. Okay, so I have a lot of dental related questions for you.
Okay, let me qualify myself. I'm a
Okay,
retired periodontist. I retired 28 years ago. So I can't tell
okay.
you what to do. I can't tell a dentist what to do. Plus, I was a surgeon. I wasn't an orthodontist, but I can give people my opinion,
Yes,
and
that's what
that's all
I'm
I can say.
so excited to hear is your opinion. Somebody who, your story is very relatable to everybody listening, is that you had a personal experience and you had to take it into your own hands, and you completely changed your life in the process of healing yourself. And I think that's the story for most people listening. And so your opinion really really matters to all of us.
Okay, that's nice.
So, first off, I first learned of you. I heard you on another podcast, and I've been trying to do my own research because my daughter just turned 15, and the dentist is saying it's time to get those wisdom teeth removed. And so the oral surgeon is calling me twice a week. And I have not really been able to find, I'm like, there's got to be a documentary that will just teach me about our wisdom teeth and the risks of removing them, the risks of not removing them, because it's all very Western dental driven, any information out there, and it's very fear based. And to me, my head says, well, this is very much, I have three boys, and it's very much like, well, you just get them circumcised. And for me, it was like, well, no, no, why? And and so for my daughter's wisdom teeth and eventually my boy's wisdom teeth, I want to go into this feeling educated and making a decision with intention versus the system just saying that's just what you do. Because in what I learned, I sure as heck didn't circumcise my boys. And I have a feeling that we might follow the same path with wisdom teeth, but I just want to have the wisdom teeth conversation.
Okay, yeah, I can give you my opinion. Basically, I can't speak for Montana or anywhere else in the country, but I can speak for Philadelphia. It's kind of like you've reached the age where you need your wisdom teeth out. It's just like a
Mm-hmm.
granted thing. Like you start driving when you're 16, you get your license, and then you
Right.
go to college when you're 18, and there comes a point where it just becomes part of the norm that you've reached the age where you get your wisdom teeth out, and they'll make the argument that there's a tooth bud there and it's easy to do it, and you're young and all that. And that's okay, if you want to do that. My question is, will your jaw be large enough, wide enough to have those wisdom teeth erupt and they're still functional? That's the big question. You just don't take wisdom. If you have a good sized jaw and there's going to be room for those wisdom teeth, why would you have them out?
Right.
So that would be my big thing. I
And
kept my
do you
wisdom
feel like,
teeth until I was in my 50s. They'll give you the argument, well, they're more difficult to get out when you get older, and all that. I had my wisdom teeth in my 50s, and I had decay on a few, so I had them out. I still have one wisdom tooth. Uh, I'm 78. I still have a wisdom tooth in there. So yeah, it's something that you're going to have to decide what to do. You want to think this through. You want to do your research. You don't want to go along with the herd. The herd will say, "Well, okay, everybody said, doctor said, or this is what everybody's doing." So everybody does circumcision. Everybody does this and that. So, but you have to think of what's happening there. Is your jaw wide enough? Is it large enough where those wisdom teeth can actually be functional? Or do you have a small jaw and big teeth, and maybe you do need to have to get them out? It's just not a slam dunk when you go to the dentist.
right.
That's my opinion.
And okay. And do you have knowledge? So, is there a certain way that wisdom teeth naturally kind of grow in? So, when you're seeing them on the x-ray and they're saying, okay, it's time to get these out. From the bit of research that I've done, it's almost like they're kind of at a natural angle forward and then they come up.
They can be. I'm not too familiar with that, but they can be angulated, or they can be horizontal, or they can be vertical. So
Okay.
your child might be like 22 and they're vertical and it's being trapped in there, and you might say, okay, that might be an indication to have that tooth out. So there are whole scenarios to this. Again, I'm not an oral surgeon, so I can't speak as an oral surgeon, but I mean, I'm just giving you general knowledge that you need to do your research. You need to look at each tooth. Can it be functional someday?
Well, and I guess I think like at this point in my research and even in this conversation it's, I think it's kind of you just keep observing and make decisions as needed. And
Right.
maybe it's not across the board, just preventatively get them all out.
That's right. Now you have to remember each tooth is related to an organ. It's related to an energy flow, a meridian. So, I mean, these things, when you talk to your dentist about that, they probably go right over their head.
Mhm.
But it's, God put it there, and maybe we should keep it. So I kept mine, and sometimes even if they're impacted, you may decide to keep them. So it's an individual situation. There's no real right answer. There's no real wrong answer. I think we have this freedom in America. I hope we still have this freedom where we can decide what goes on in our mouth. So you're the one who's paying, and you're the one who's going to the dentist. So you should have the final say. So that's my opinion.
Okay. And then before we move on to something else, in your practice, are you having to do a lot of cranial sacral healing from maybe traumatic injuries from wisdom teeth removal? Do you see that in your practice?
I did when I was a practicing periodontist. This goes back into the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s before I left. I left in 1997. But every year, somebody would come in, usually like 18, 19, 20 years old. They had their wisdom teeth out. Dentist said, well, we need your wisdom teeth out. They went into the hospital and they were knocked out when they had their wisdom teeth out. And when that happens, the dentist can you're not conscious. They'll open your mouth. They'll usually put a rubber thing back there to keep your jaw wide open, and then they'll start pulling and extracting these four teeth. And that may be fine and good, but for this particular individual that is coming to me, there was too much force used. There was too much trauma in getting usually one tooth out. It tore the TMJ ligaments, and the patient came in with irretractable pain 24/7. The pain never stopped.
Wow.
And I worked on these children, well, they're young adults. I worked on them, couldn't help them. They eventually sued, and their lawyers would have me in as the expert witness for the plaintiff for them. And, it got to be where virtually every case was lost. The dentist always prevailed. So it was a difficult type of situation. So that's what's possible. And in any type of dental procedure, there can be a problem with it. So it's not like a slam dunk and this is a guarantee and everything's going to be fine. So you have to be careful if you are having your wisdom teeth out. If I were having it done, I would go to the dent. I would go to an oral surgeon. I wouldn't go to a general dentist. I'd go to an oral surgeon. I'd have her or him numb half of my face, and I would open wide, not too wide, and they would extract the wisdom teeth here, and I'd be totally conscious, where nobody be stretching my jaw wide open, and I would have those teeth out. Wait a month or so. Okay, let's do these teeth now. Numb these, do these teeth. So I wouldn't go in to a dentist and have all four out at once. You can do that, but I want to chew on one side. I want to let another side heal.
Well, kind of along with this is the next question is, would you get a root canal? Why or why not?
Root canal, yeah. Good question.
I on my Instagram, and I have a community, I invited the members and my followers to submit their questions, and there was over 100 people that asked about root canals.
Root canals, yeah. Okay, let me take you back to dental school. I had to do an internship in endodontics, which is root canals, and there wasn't one word in dental school about anything negative about root canals. Zero, nothing. I had a dental education for 6 years. There was nothing wrong with root canals. Root canals are the way to go. That's the way we were taught. So you get out there in the natural world, and then you find out, hey, mercury's not so great, so I got all my mercury fillings out. Fluoride's not so great, so none of my kids had fluoride, and I don't have any toothpaste fluoride, so I didn't find. So then after a while, you start, hey, what's the ADA up to here? And then you start seeing things about root canals, which carry a lot of bacteria, pathological bacteria. They can go through the whole body, get to your heart, create a lot of problems, and there's cancer, and you say, what's real here? And, so I looked at that, and I looked at that seriously. I say that, yeah, that could be a possibility. I always have an open mind to things, unlike most dentists and medical people, they're very closed-minded. I have an open mind, but I don't let my brains fall out. I try to be real about it. And so I had both sides to it, and I didn't do too much until I was 70. And then one of my lower molars got infected, and I needed a root canal. So here I am, 70 years old. I need a root canal. What do? I have two options. Well, I have a number of options. I can take the tooth out, have the tooth out, and then put an implant in, which I'm not doing. I would never do an implant for myself. That's another story. I would have to put a bridge in there. I wouldn't put a bridge in there. I just let it heal. Um, that was one option. The other option would be to have the root canal done, but go to the endodontist. And I went to the best endodontist in Philadelphia. I found a guy who taught at school, been doing it for 30 or 40 years. He was the best. I went to him, paid more money, blah, blah, blah. He did a really, really good job. He showed me the x-rays. It was done really, really well. He cleaned it out really, really well. So I decided to go down that road. But the key was how it's going to last in the long term. What's it going to be like in the long term? So when I go for my cleanings every year, I have the hygienist take an x-ray of that one tooth. And I want to look at the bone around the tooth. I want to look at the bone around the apex of that tooth to make sure that it's okay. It's not deteriorating, and then there's no change. And then that's what I would do. Again, this is just my opinion. That's what I'd recommend. That you can do a root canal, but it has to be done really well, and you need to monitor it. If you go to the dentist every few years getting X-rays, you want to have that checked. And if we took an X-ray and it did blow up, then I'd have to make a decision: do I have it out, or what do I do then? Plus,
Right.
my health has been really good for the last 8 years since I've had the root canal. So it's not like I had a heart problem afterwards, or I had cancer, something like that. So I'm
Right.
assuming that everything is okay. So that's my stance on root canals. Again, my opinion. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Okay, so now I have a question about braces. And
good.
I
I was
feel like in
hoping to
the
get to
inter
orthodontics.
Oh,
We could do a
yes,
whole
good. Okay,
podcast on orthodontics.
let's get into the braces.
Okay, before you get into that, there are three phases. There's palatal expansion, there's braces, and then there's a retainer at the end. After you're done, we'll get into
Okay.
that.
I
Palatal
am
expansion
so
is
lucky enough that I didn't have to have braces. And so this is just a whole new world and conversation for me. And, my kids are 15, 11, 8, and 6. And for all of them, the conversation is very heavy at the dentist. And just like the wisdom teeth, I'm like, I feel like I need to be more educated before I make any decisions.
yeah. I mean, you can do what you want. I mean, remember that the orthodontist, at least in Philadelphia, you're looking at 10 grand, maybe more, 15 grand. I mean, there's a lot of money in orthodontics, and then it can be fairly optional. One of my really close friends was an orthodontist. He told me that 85% of his practice was there just because of looks, how you smile,
Wow.
you know, how are the teeth lined up. And
Wow.
for the girls, it was all about the wedding pictures, the wedding, the smiling and the bite and everything. And it's, rarely where you see a bad bite where someone needs to get orthodontics to have a bad bite corrected because they're getting headaches, jaw problems. And, I see that once in a while, but most of it's aesthetics. And that's where America is. That's where the culture is. So that's, but let me get into your first probably adventure with the orthodontist is your general dentist. Somebody will say that there's a high palate, the jaws are narrow, you need to have your face widened, you need your jaw widened, you need palatal expansion. So you go to the orthodontist and they'll make this contraption that sits up on your upper jaw and may have a screw, and it slowly widens your face. And that's the conventional standard of care for widening the face, something like that. In my world, in craniosacrofacial world, it can strongly restrict the normal brain motion. The brain needs to slowly expand and contract. The brain needs to breathe, and the fascia needs to be loose. What this palatal expansion can do is really restrict the brain motion. You might have a child who have a very long brain cycle, then they're happy and they're fine, and they have a palatal expander put on, and they start to get headaches, and they start to get this and that, and they get asthma, and their breathing problem, and that these problems start up. It's because of the craniosacrofacial system has been restricted by the orthodontist. So that's phase one on the palate. After that, it's usually, okay, we got to put braces on. When they put the Vans on the front teeth and they put an wire across here and they tighten everything down, it'll restrict the motion of the maxillary bones, which will restrict the motion of the cranial bones, which will make your child's heads tight, and all of a sudden they have behavioral problems, they have ADHD, they have headaches, they have whatever they have. And, the orthodontist said, well, that's not me, but that's what they're doing. They're restricting this craniosacrofacial system. And the third thing is, okay, you get all your braces off, it's 2 years, and now what they'll do is make an appliance that snaps up in the upper jaw. That will restrict the motion of the maxillary bones. That will create a tight hip. So that's my take on it. Unfortunately, it's not the standard of care. If it's in America, it's not. It's even in Pennsylvania, if a dentist could take me before the state board and say, this whole cranial motion, this fascia thing it's never been scientifically proven, and we're practicing the standard of care, and you're out. So that's the way it is in Pennsylvania, and it may be like that in your state too. But I think down the road, the craniosacrofacial system, the brain motion is incredibly important. How well your child's brain is breathing, your newborn, your child. It has a great effect. And when you go to my website, Gillespie Approach, you're going to see 1,000 stories on brain motion and fascia, and mostly babies and children. So it's a really important problem. Let me tell you my first experience with an orthodontist. So I'm in Hyannis. It's 1978. And I worked on a boy who had headaches. And I did really well with him, and his headaches went away. I did cranial work. And his mother was really pleased. So I didn't hear from him again. And about 8 months later, the mom calls me up. My son has headaches now. I said, what happened? Did you have a fall or something? Any trauma? And she said, no. I said, well, bring him in. Let's just take a look at him. What happened is he went to the orthodontist. He had all his teeth banded up here. They had an arch wire here. You know how when you have braces on, they really tighten everything down to move the teeth. So when you're moving teeth, you're restricting the motion of the maxillary bones. Those bones get tight. The sinus bones get tight, and the large cranial bones get tight. Your sacrum gets tight. The whole craniosacrofacial system gets tight. And it's a problem, and he had a headache because of the braces. So here I am, a dentist in Hyannis, and I have to go to the orthodontist and basically said, you're the problem. You created the headaches. And because the parents paid thousands of dollars, and now their kid has a headache.
Yeah.
And so that was my first exposure to orthodontics. And I was on Cape Cod for 8 years. And if you multiply that by a number of stories, my practice depended on dental referrals, people sending me patients and, professional dentists, physicians, and that went away. And so I had to leave. So I left Cape Cod and I came to Pennsylvania. So that was a rude awakening to find out, how things were. This is just the way it is. And if you, in your state, I don't know wherever you're coming from, palate expanders, braces, and retainers are all probably the standard of care. And somebody like me come along, I'll come along and say, hey, that's a problem because it restricts brain motion. The State Board of Dentistry in Wyoming or Nebraska or wherever going to say, well, it's unscientific, unproven, you're out. So you can't make a case for that.
Wow, isn't it? It's really sad. It's
It
really
is. I mean,
sad because what
yeah.
you are doing, it's not as profitable as this 3-stage process of expanding the face, right?
Yeah, and then we got into the newborn work. Just take that one step further. When we saw our 600 babies, one day a baby came in, and the palate was literally V-shaped. It was very narrow face. The baby was a few weeks old. Okay, very narrow faced.
Wow.
So I couldn't put my index finger all the way. I couldn't seat it all the way up in the palate, and I couldn't wiggle it this way. It just got stuck up there. So I was with two of my colleagues, two of my students, and we were out there and we worked on this baby for about 10 minutes. I said, well, let me check and see what happened to the roof of the mouth. So all of a sudden I go up there and my finger went all the way up to the roof of the mouth and I could wiggle it back and forth like I had a normal palate. The bones, when you're born, the bones aren't really bones. They're cartilage, they're intermembranous tissue. It's very soft, very moldable. And you can do a lot in the first few weeks of life to have great facial structure. Not many people know that, but I think that's the root of a lot of orthodontics, where there's a lot of trauma at birth. A lot of bones are out of alignment. The teeth get in alignment, and they come in crooked, and all of a sudden you're 12 years old, and we need orthodontics for $13,000. So that's it should have been addressed at birth. That's my opinion, and
Oh,
that's why I'm very hard on the work done at birth. It
so
should be
this
done on day one. It should be done in the
training,
hospitals with your midwife, with your doula, at your birthing center. It should be done on day one. All of the work we do for infants and children, that's the most powerful work. And you go to my website, you're going to see that. It's all should be done at birth.
I mean, you're kind of blowing my mind right now because I mean, there's so many times where you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I could have known this 15 years ago," right? I wish I could have known this. But
Right.
if I were becoming a mom right now, I is this something that I could learn at your training?
Yeah. Again, we teach all moms. We teach, you don't have to know any medical knowledge. You don't have to know the cranial nerves or the bones or muscles. It's all about feeling. It's all about feeling brain motion. It's all about feeling fascial strain. It's all about feeling fascia releasing. It's nice to know, what's here. Oh yeah, the thyroid's here, and the hyoid bone's here. It's nice to know that, but it's not necessary. I mean, it's all about feeling, and it's all about allowing the body. You're facilitating the healing. You're allowing the body to heal itself. The body will show you the trauma that it wants to release, and you're going to help it release it out of the body. And if you do it over a series of visits, you're going to release a lot of the strain from that infant and that child, and everything will start to switch and open up and become more normal. So, what we believe in is to get to the root of the problem, the root cause of the problem, rather than treat, the symptoms, and just band aid the problem. I mean, that's what we do. Currently, the
Yeah.
medical profession, pediatricians, they know drug surgery and technology. They're going to band aid a problem forever. And then they'll pass it on. And you may have asthma in your whole life. It could have been corrected at birth, possibly, or even when you were younger. As a child, you could have headaches your whole life, well, from birth trauma. It should have been
Mhm.
corrected at birth. You can have a lot of problems in those 40 weeks. There's a lot of trauma. What happened during delivery? Did you have forceps? Did you have vacuum suction? Did you get stuck? Did you have shoulder dystocia? What happened during labor? Was it a nice, easy labor, 8, 9 hours, or was it fast, or was it 30 hours? Our record is about 92 hours of labor. How much pressure did you have during that labor? And in fetal life, we found out fetal life is not great. I mean, there could be a bicornate uterus, there could be fibroids, there could be a uterus where there's a lot of fascial strain and it really doesn't want to expand. So you're living in this organ that just doesn't want to expand, and you're being compressed like this.
Yeah.
You may have a twin there, you may multiple births. There are a lot of things that can happen in utero. You may get twisted in a certain position like this, and then you wonder why your neck is bothering you over here because you were twisted in fetal, for a number of months. Nobody saw it, nobody corrected it, and you go through your whole life because now you have neck strain over here. This fascia just grew into this position. So there's so many things that can happen, during those 40 weeks. It's really, really important. The medical profession, at least in Philadelphia, they'll say that as long as the Apgar scores are good, as long as you're breathing and as long as the heart rate's good and you look good and you seem fine, you're good to go.
Yeah,
In
you're
my
good.
world, you're not. Your fascia is tight. Your cranial bones are probably out of position. You're probably a lot of strain in there, and you're not happy. When a newborn or baby's not happy, they're going to cry, and that's what they do. That's when they tell you there's something wrong. Babies cry when they're wet or when they're hungry. But when there's a lot of crying at night, and they're just crying, they have colic, they're in pain. So, you go to the pediatrician, well, they'll grow out of it. And, well, I'm not really. No. Do they grow into IBS? Do they grow into Crohn's disease?
Exactly.
What is this? What are we growing out of? You still
Well,
have
it's
that
actually, what
strain
are
in
we
it.
growing into? Yeah,
Yeah, you grow out of
exactly.
something, you grow into it. You go into a backache, you go into something like that. And that's just what I see.
So, in an ideal world, we have this knowledge and we can support our infants, but if our listeners are like me and we're many years into motherhood, is there work that we can do at this age to support their mouth
Oh, sure.
development?
Yeah, yeah. No matter
Okay,
what age, it's doable. Fairly. It takes more visits. It's just
right.
more visits. I'm just saying it's a lot easier if we could do it all on
Definitely. Okay,
day one. You're in
right.
the 99% of Americans are born in the hospital. In Philadelphia, you have 2 days for vaginal birth, 4 for a C-section. So during that first day, somebody could work on your baby every hour for 24 hours. So the whole idea is to get your baby strain free. So on day 2, when you leave, your baby can breathe well, they can breastfeed well, they can digest well, they can poop well, and they can nap well. You're going to take home a happy baby.
That all of us moms are just wishing that there was you in our birthing circle, right?
Yeah, the
um,
problem is I'm 78, and I can't. I don't know how
I
long.
know.
But the
Okay,
good
I
news is
have a
we're training
couple.
people. Kim and Holly are out there, and we're training, and look at our schedule, and hopefully we'll be near you. If we're not near you, you shoot an email to Kim or Holly. Say, hey, I'm in X. I'm in this state. I'm in this city. I can get enough people. We can have a training. Come to
Okay.
wherever, come to where we live. We will support you. We'll have a training, and they will
Well,
come there.
that's amazing. So I'll have your website and all of your information linked in the show notes so anybody listening can find you really
Yeah.
easily. But I think my takeaway so far is that's exactly what I'm going to do for my children's wisdom teeth and making decisions with braces. I'm going to do what I can. And I'm not going to listen to this pressured timeline that the younger, the better. You have to hurry and get it done with because, knowing that the majority of cases for braces is more aesthetic, it's never too late to make that decision either. But trying to repair the body from, the tightness or from damage or trauma is a lot harder than making these decisions with a lot of intention up front.
Right. If you do decide to go to an orthodontist, you want to go to someone who is interested in brain motion, interested in fascia, interested in our world. And they often have to be interested in airway. There's airway problems where
How
everything
do
is
you
tight in the
find these
throat and the
work? How do you find
nasopharynx,
this orthodontist?
and you're not getting enough air into your system, into your respiratory system, into your sinuses. So there's a whole lot of airway problems going on in orthodontics. So you really need to do research, and those dentists can be hard to find, to be
Well,
honest,
yeah, that's my
because
question is how do we
everybody's in
find? Yeah.
everybody's in the standard of care. Everybody's on the island, and there are 100 dentists on the island, and you decide to, hey, there's a problem with airway, and what about this brain motion? And before you know it, you're gonna be off the island. You're
Yep.
not part of the game anymore.
Yep.
So that's how it ends up, very unfortunately. But that's you need to find a dentist who you can work with.
Yeah.
And if
Who,
you're a parent, you're going to be working on your children before you even go into orthodontics. You're going to have your children really brain free, everything look really good. And then you just have to do your research and you have to decide what you want to do. When parents come to me, I'm terrible at sales. I don't tell people what to do. If you want therapy, we'll do it. If you don't, that's fine. Either way. So it's what people want to do. I think this is America, and we all have choice. We have freedom of choice, and we don't like to be pressured. We don't like to be fear based. If you don't do this now, these are the 5 things that are going to happen down the road. Well, nobody really knows the future, and we don't know. So let me do my research, and maybe we'll go day to day, and then we'll decide what we want to do. So
right.
again, this is my
Well, I think
opinion.
Well, I share that opinion. This is true for every part of our health, right? We have to really take the time to educate ourselves so that we can make decisions in alignment for our own families. Now, Barry, before we wrap up, I have a couple of just quick questions. I know that you talked about fluoride briefly and how you don't use fluoride, but I had a lot of people wanting to hear your opinion on fluoride.
Yeah, fluoride's a poison. I think it came from the aluminum industry, and the aluminum industry had this fluoride as some type of residue. And we're just sitting around, and they said, okay, let's make some money. And this goes before 1939, before the FDA did a lot of research and studies, and they found out that if they add a little into the water, it prevents decay. That's one opinion. I don't see any research. I don't see any long-term research on that. With a standardized control groups, randomized control, double blind. I don't think the research has ever been done on that, but it's again like orthodontics and wisdom teeth. That's part of the culture. That's what everybody does. That's what we do. Drink water that's fluoridated. I don't drink water that's fluoridated. I don't even brush my teeth with toothpaste. I think it's a lot of Madison Avenue. I haven't used toothpaste in 40 years. It's in school we learned it was actually the mechanical action of the bristles of the brush that clean the teeth. It's the floss that cleans the sides of the teeth. And if you want your mouth to smell good and you have chemicals, you can use some toothpaste. So I mean that's just it's you have to look at the culture and see what's happened. So that's my opinion on fluoride and also mercury. In 1980, I was reading through some dental research, and I was looking at countries in Europe. There were a number of countries that banned mercury,
Hmm.
amalgam fillings, which are 50% mercury. And I was reading on, I said, why is this? And they said, well, what happens when you have a mercury filling, that the mercury vaporizes 24/7. So either you swallow it, or you breathe it in. And then I said, okay, where does it go after that? And nobody knows. So mercury is the most toxic neurotoxin in the world, and we have it in our mouths. And it's interesting when the dentist put it in, everything was fine, but then you go have it taken out, and everybody shows up with a hazmat and gear and big suction, and it's oh
It's a
really,
deal.
now they're going to be exposed to all the mercury vapor.
The very last question that I have is um, there might be two. You brought up how you don't use toothpaste. That was a question that was asked a lot is what toothpaste do you recommend? And are you a proponent of hydroxyapatite?
What toothpaste to use? Hydroxyapatite. When I was a periodontist, there used to be a mixture of people. You used to make your own toothpaste of baking soda and hydrogen peroxide, and you used to mix it up into like a paste, and that was like a brush. You'd brush it into your gums. You brush your teeth with that. They did the research on that, and they found out in the late 70s, early 80s that it really stopped periodontal disease. It really affected periodontal disease where people didn't need surgery anymore. So the periodontists at that time, just went Okay, we, that became a problem. So that's one way to go. There are other companies like Tom's in Maine. And there are probably some toothpaste out there with no fluoride and no chemicals. I'm sure there's some, and you may want to use that. That's fine. If you want your mouth to taste good. I just didn't want anything else in my mouth, so I just brush my teeth with dry brushes, and I use floss, and I've been doing that for decades. So
Wow.
that's what I do. But again, this whole podcast has been my opinion. Yeah,
Yes. Well, Barry, we really
yeah,
appreciate your opinion.
yeah. It's just my opinion, and you can take what resonates and what doesn't resonate. You can reject, and that's fine.
The last question that came up a lot is about mouth breathing, and I'm wondering if you have anything to say about that.
Mouth breathing, yeah,
Yeah.
starts at birth. You see the newborns that come in, and then when they breathe, they're this, or I'll say is your baby a mouth breather, and they'll say yes. Yeah, we go in at night and we try to do the, but they end up like breathing through their mouth.
Mhm.
So then you have to ask the questions: are the sinuses clogged up, or is there fascial strain coming from the chest, throat, neck, pulling into all of this tissue that's creating the mouth breathing? And then you
Mhm.
get into the tongue tie problems, and then you get into the tongue and the lip tie, and you get into the myofunctional work done. I mean, the dentistry really expands out into specialties now, and if when you get into that world, you really need to look at the fascia, look at the connective tissue that's pulling on all these structures. We have strain that's pulling into the upper body, pulling into the sinuses, it'll pull into the eye, it'll create strabismus, it'll create lazy eye, it'll create eye problems. And then fascia starts pulling in there, it can create jaw problems. There's a lot going on. So that's what I see. And if you're interested, go to GillespieApproach.com. If you're interested in training, click on training. You go right to my Kim and Holly's website. If you're interested in the articles, you can read the articles. We have a newsletter. You can subscribe to that for free. You just get my opinion. I write an article, 2 articles every week. I've written over 1,000 articles, whatever your infant has, and I'll have some articles on it and see if it's helpful or not. So I'm very excited about the work, and I'm very excited that people like you are interested in having people like me talk about the other world
Well,
that you
I'm
never
really
hear on
grateful.
media.
Yes, I'm so grateful to have this conversation because we see so much marketing, even like for mouth breathing, just get mouth tape. There's products, buy this and buy this and buy this. And it's actually that we need to do the deeper work of
You need to
releasing
get to
it, healing the
the root
body.
cause of the
Yeah.
problem. And what we found with most people, the root cause of the problem was birth trauma. What happened during fetal life, what happened during labor, what happened during delivery. When you popped out, the seeds of whatever you have are probably sown then. It should have been looked at then. It should have been mitigated then. It should have been corrected then. You should have gone home with a happy baby, a baby that's healthy, not a baby who can't nurse well and they're pooping every 8 days and they're crying all the time and they're up at night and you can't sleep. That's not my world. I don't see that world. I want a happy baby world where this work is done in every birthing center, in every hospital, every midwife in America, where everybody has a happy baby. And I want those kids, those happy babies, to grow up to be happy children. They're eating whole food, organic, mostly plant based, whatever you feel is necessary, but eating really healthy food, a lot of fresh air, doing all the sensible things that we already know. So they're happy kids. So that's the way I see it. That's my goal.
Wow, Barry, in my dream world, you and I can go on this mission together because that's mine is, every birthing center, every hospital, there needs to be this awareness of how important the microbiome is throughout pregnancy and birth. And if we can join your work and my work on the microbiome, I mean, the health of our whole world is so different because it all starts in pregnancy and birth.
I know it's crazy. Like 32% of the babies are born by C-section.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to the microbiome?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the whole idea of
Yeah.
part of going through the vaginal process is that you're getting mom's microbiome. Yeah. And
And then you just miss
32%, a
it.
third of the babies
Yeah.
aren't getting the microbiome. What do they
Well,
do?
and then, well, yeah. So their first microbial exposure is environmental. And this could just be a whole nother conversation. But then even if even if your baby, like I was, feel so grateful. I did have a natural childbirth at a birthing center, and it wasn't C-section, and still my child really struggled with his microbiome health from the very beginning. And there's just a lack of education for mothers of how
Yeah.
important our microbiome is and what we pass on to our children during birth, even if it is vaginal. And so you have my mind spinning.
To be, yeah, birthing seems to be like a sacred event, something that's like, wow,
Yeah.
this is very special. And, some hospitals, some medical people turn it into, it's like you have a disease and we have to treat the disease and, we're going to take care of you. And so I think there's a disconnect there. At least that's what I see around in Philadelphia. You hear those stories. So it's just something that needs to flip into. That's my position.
Well, thank you for your time, Barry. It's
Oh, you're
been
welcome.
so nice getting to know you. I can't wait to share your message with the world.
I hope the world takes it well. It's just my opinion, and this is what I've learned.
Before we wrap up, I love closing out the episode with your transformations and answers to your questions. This is my favorite way to stay connected with you and to support you no matter where you are in your healing journey. If you want to submit a question, I open up a question box every month on my Instagram stories, so watch for that. Submit your questions and make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you are sure to hear the answers. Now, let's get into it. A transformation and a question asked by so many of you in last month's question box. This week's transformation comes from a mama who shared, "We are not quite a week into the detox. I can't believe the transformation already. He's sleeping better. His skin is so much clearer. No more red, inflamed skin." What makes this message so powerful is that this mom was scared and skeptical before she started. Like so many parents, she had tried so many different things and wasn't sure if this would be any different. But now, just 1 week in, her child's body is already showing what's possible when you deeply commit to and trust the healing process. Everyone's timeline is unique. Some people, like this sweet boy, see changes really quickly, while for others, it takes more time. But this transformation is such a beautiful reminder that once you start rebalancing and the body feels safe again, healing begins. The gut calms, inflammation settles, and you can literally see the body coming back into balance. Now, this week's question is such an important one. It's something I know so many of you wonder about. This mama asked, "Do you believe allergies improve too when the gut is balanced and the skin improves?" Yes, absolutely yes. Allergies and skin symptoms are not separate issues. They are two different expressions of the same root imbalance. Around 80% of your immune system lives in the gut. So when your gut becomes inflamed or overrun with bad bacteria, yeast, mold, fungus, parasites, heavy metals, or toxins, the immune system becomes hypersensitive. It starts reacting to foods, to environmental triggers, even to the body's own tissues. That's where we see things like eczema, hives, rashes, food allergies, sensitivities, and asthma. They are the immune system communicating that it's overwhelmed and it needs help. So when you rebalance your gut, you're not just healing the skin. You're not just healing one symptom. You are calming inflammation at the root. the gut lining strengthens, the immune system stops having to be overreactive, and suddenly the body doesn't perceive everything as a threat anymore. This is why families see food allergies lessen, or in most cases, completely disappear. Seasonal allergies fade, sensitivities calm, and skin symptoms clear all at the same time. I saw this exact transformation in my own son. When I healed his eczema through rebalancing, his 9 food allergies completely disappeared. These are allergies we were told he would live with his entire life. And he's not an exception. This is something I see over and over again in families who commit to restoring balance instead of just eliminating the triggering foods and chasing symptoms. Because the truth is, when the gut heals, the immune system heals. And when the immune system heals, allergies go away. This is the power of healing from the root. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend or a family member who's ready to lead her family's healing. Everything mentioned in this episode is linked down below for you in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe to the Nourish newsletter, also linked down below, so you never miss an episode. I will email you the latest episode every Tuesday morning. Everything shared on this show is for educational purposes only, not intended as medical advice. Until next time, trust your body and follow your gut.